10th of October. And yes, I was just about to say for guests and speakers to remind you that even though we're a small group today, we are recording the session for replay later. I think we've got a really great session today, which will be useful to NGOs all over the world. My name is Craig. I am with the World Federation for Animals, and I work there as a membership coordinator and also the head of operations. As Tang mentioned, I was formerly with the Asia for Animals Coalition and have a real soft spot for helping farmed animals in Asia. So I'm delighted to be part of this event. I'm joined today by Christine Chu, who is the head of strategic initiatives, at the Aquatic Life Alliance. And works to help their coalitions, among them the Aquatic Animal Alliance, which I think Christine will speak about today. Normally she's based in Spain, but she joined us today from San Francisco. It's very late there, so it really shows her dedication to the animals of Asia. So thanks for that, Christine. And also with us is Angel Lau of the Open Wing Alliance, which is a coalition formed by the Humane League. Angel is the Asia coordinator now for Open Wing Alliance and joins us from Hong Kong. Hi to you both. Thanks for joining.
Hi, thanks, Greg.
So yeah, to any attendees, please use the chat function if you'd like to ask questions. And we'll wait until after both speakers to do that. I think we'll just get started. So it's Christine's presentation first. Have I got that correct? Yeah, great. Okay, so when you're ready, the floor is yours, Christine. Thanks.
Sure. Should I share my screen?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Okay. Let me just see here. Great. Can you all see this? Okay, let me just put it in presentation mode. Well, okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very pleased to be here on this panel for Asia Farm Animal Day. I'm Chris, and it is a bit late here in San Francisco. I'm going to try to speak as coherently as possible. I'm kind of a grandma. So today I'll be speaking about boosting our advocacy efforts through collaborations and specifically our alliances for aquatic animals. I'll give a brief overview of the Aquatic Life Institute and what we do, and then two of our main coalitions. First, the Aquatic Animal Alliance, and then the Coalition for Aquatic Conservation. So the Aquatic Life Institute, we're a fairly new organization. We were founded in 2019 by William Bench, who saw a huge gap in the animal welfare movement regarding aquatic animal welfare. 100 billion fish are farmed currently, while 2 to 3 trillion fishes are caught annually. And that's compared to land animals killed at a ratio of 15:1. So hugely neglected space, and that's why ALI was founded to address this issue. So we work from around the world to reduce the suffering of aquatic animals that's exploited for food. And we do this primarily through 3 main pillars. The first one is coalition building. We really support coalitions and working with networks. So we bring in various stakeholders from different regions of the world and with different expertise, some with animal welfare, some with ocean conservation, legal, veterinarians, etc., with the common goal of reducing aquatic animal suffering. Our second pillar is research. We have an internal research team that kind of sets our programmatic priorities based on, neglected areas, species, etc., and also high impact interventions that we can advocate for. And the third pillar is institutional and market change, where we lobby decision makers who have, power to influence how aquatic animals are utilized in the food supply chain. So that includes retailers, corporations, and then also fish farmers, and any government institutions that can set standards, certifications, policies, or guidelines. So I like to give a brief overview of the movement for aquatic animals. It's quite new. When we first started, there were very few organizations working in this space, and a lot of them were and are still in the process of scoping and planning what they're going to do. That includes some, research, public education, and then recently some undercover investigations as well. But because it's a very new movement, we wanted to come in and kind of coordinate it and prevent any inconsistencies, and really make sure that we have a coordinated voice when we go to industry and other stakeholders as cohesive and consistent as possible in our advocacy asks. And because we as an organization are aligned with effective altruism's principles, we decided to work on farmed fish because throughout the length of their lives, they suffer for a longer period of time than wild caught fish. Although we are looking into welfare issues in capture fisheries as well, because that's also a highly neglected area. And our strategy is to form coalitions and then use that strength to work with industry and really use that, power to kind of influence them and support aquatic animals. And let's see. So the first and our bread and butter alliance, I would say, is the Aquatic Animal Alliance, which was formed last year, early last year, by 8 founding members, led by ALI. With these members and other experts, we formed the first welfare guide for aquaculture, which identifies 5 main welfare pillars in aquaculture. That includes environmental enrichment, water quality, stocking density, feed composition, and stunning and slaughter. And because our coalitions are based all over the world, they helped us translate this into 6 foreign languages, and all of us can use this guide in our advocacy movement. So that was really great. And the main campaign from the AAA is a certifications campaign, which started last June. And I'm going to jump to this slide to tell you a little bit more. So as you can see here on the slide, we have many different certifiers. These are just a small sample. We've counted over 60 all over the world, and it's more if you include some local certifiers that are not under our radar. For currently, the total market is that 25% is officially certified or green rated, while the majority, 75%, is unassessed, needs improvement, or is actively improving. And the flaw is that currently no global certification labeling scheme incorporates high welfare standards for aquatic animals. They're mostly focused on physiological health, like disease prevention and biosecurity threats, but not at all on psychological health, nor the ability for the fishes to choose to engage in natural behavior. So our objective is to align these certification bodies with consistent and high welfare standards to prevent us, advocates going to stakeholders with different asks, and then possibly industry will just cherry pick the lowest one and possibly lead to humane washing. I'm going to go back to this slide. So all of our alliance members sign on to public comments, and we submitted 5 last year and 12 this year so far. The biggest success, I would say, so far is with GlobalGAP, which they were really impressed with our coordinated effort and comments signed by everybody. So they implemented several important updates, and they actually certified 2 million metric tons yearly, which translates to 2 billion individual lives improved. And that's a huge win so far for the movement. Some of the new standards they implemented include requiring staff to be trained in animal welfare handling techniques, eliminating shrimp to originate from female shrimps with eye stalk ovulation. They require the producers to keep track of mortality records to include the cause and the types of disease. And they also include feeding guidelines where they need to evenly distribute the feed to avoid competition and aggression during feeding. And the last one is something we're really excited about, environmental enrichment, because this is something we've been heavily advocating for. It's quite simple. You can, for example, change the color of a tank wall, for example, and quite cost effective. So from an EA perspective, this is something we would really want industry to implement. So see, yeah, so that's with GlobalGAP. And another success is very recent, and I'm really excited about this. It's with the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. They recently implemented, created a high-level policy paper on the development of aquaculture for the next decade, pretty much to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. We submitted comments to them that were signed by our coalition members, and for the first time, the UN has included animal welfare at length in a high-level policy paper that goes beyond just disease prevention and biosecurity to actually acknowledge their sentience and really include their welfare in global aquaculture development. So that was really amazing, probably the biggest win for aquatic animals this year. So yeah, our theory of change is, submitting these types of public comments with the support from our members to show really a strong voice and a coherent movement. And then once we get the certifiers to change their standards, it'll be much easier to work with other players along the supply chain, and that involves retailers and farm producers. And now I will talk about the Coalition for Aquatic Conservation. This is a coalition that I direct personally at ALI. And our mission is to close the gap between ocean conservation advocates and aquatic animal welfare advocates via this coalition. Why? Because aquaculture still relies heavily on wild-caught fish for feed, and yet advocates from these two sectors, wild and aquaculture, rarely talk to each other. And I'm very guilty of this because I come from a fisheries background, and we never talked about animal welfare in that space, which is very ironic because if you want healthy oceans, you need healthy animals. So now we have over 35 organizations and 9 experts. And yeah, actually, Craig helped me build helped invite a lot of these organizations, especially from Asia, from the beginning. So yeah, really great work with coalitions, coordinating with each other. So some of our activities revolve around forming various working groups that support themes that overlap between wild fisheries and aquaculture. And the two that we've created so far, one is the benefits of aquatic animal welfare for sustainability. So we recently published a report last month about why we need to talk about and care about aquatic animal welfare for sustainable development. And the second one is looking at welfare issues in captured fisheries. And we are going to publish a guide shortly in the next month about this. And members from this coalition also sign on to the feedbacks. And the most recent one was the one to the FAO that I just mentioned. And the process for all of our alliances basically is that membership is free and participation is voluntary. All of the members can join our email listserv and Slack channels and look for new opportunities where we can provide joint feedback. Some members are more active than others, and they can participate in the working groups, contribute to position papers, and sign on. Whereas the passive members kind of just review them after they're completed and then sign on. And then we have quarterly meetings to catch up. And so I we'll just end my presentation with some recommendations for where we can work together, especially, you know, for your work in fish welfare or other animals. If our alliances can benefit you, by all means, reach out, or if not, look for alliances, you know, that are more relevant to the work that you are doing. But I think from, you know, an Asian perspective, this is very important because in terms of both aquaculture and capture fisheries, Asia is the biggest player. So we would really love more participation from this region. But in terms of specific things that we could look forward to are more collaboration in terms of species-specific research, and then regional advocacy opportunities in the ASEAN region would be really great. Currently, we are still lacking some expertise in this area, and you know, by having more groups join, we can kind of plan future campaigns. For example, a corporate campaign where we reach out to retailers or other businesses in the food industry, and also understanding better the supply chain dynamics between exports and imports, and what kinds of Asian certifiers there are there for you know, aquatic animal products. Obviously, we can share resources, all of the guides that I mentioned, all of the position papers, we can all use that in our advocacy work and align our welfare asks. Also, it's really important to work together on raising consumer awareness globally, but especially in Asia, where, you know, a rising middle class is going to demand more carnivorous species like salmon. And one farmed salmon requires the equivalent of 120 anchovies to be brought to harvest weight. So this has huge implications for, you know, food security and the sustainability of the fisheries sector. And also other intersectional issues, including bycatch, ghost gear, climate change, overfishing, and what I mentioned about, you know, trying to elevate aquatic animal welfare and animal welfare in general at the UN level, because right now it's non-existent. And the other coalitions that I mentioned for legal experts and veterinarians, I didn't focus on that today, but they are available. And then the last thing I want to mention is that we are organizing an Aquatic Life Conference, a 4-day conference scheduled virtually in November 15th to 18th. And I would love to, you know, invite you all, and I can share that link with you. We have some really exciting speakers and panels lined up. That's both inside the animal welfare space and also outside of the space, including industry and media. So should be really interesting to join and really raise the profile of aquatic animal welfare together. So thank you very much. Happy to take questions after we finish with Angel's presentation. I think I'll stop there.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for that, Christine. It's really great to know, especially from your last slide there, that there are so many kind of different angles that interested NGOs could participate in Aquatic Life Institute's coalitions. And we saw on your last slide there your email address. I'll just say for anyone who's watching the replay, you can navigate to ali.fish, that's ali.fish, and all the information on the various coalitions and their work is there. It's, you know, it's important that you said there that Asia is a key region for understanding particularly the you know, the volumes of fish and the supply chain globally. So there's a real opportunity to help animals there, and I hope that NGOs watching will contact you and get involved, because it's really important angle for Asia. Thanks very much for a great presentation, and we will come back to you, as I said, for questions at the end after Angel's in a little while. So thanks, Christine. And we're now going to hear from Angel Lau of Open Wing Alliance. So Angel, the floor is yours when you like. Thanks.
Thank you, Craig. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. There we go. Thank you for your introduction at the start. And thank you, Christine, for your presentation. I think I've learned a lot in just 20 minutes. So a little bit about myself. I'm the Asia coordinator of the Open Wing Alliance at the Humane League. My name is Angel Lau, and I'm based in Hong Kong, as Craig mentioned. I first got into animal advocacy around 2018, and now I'm responsible at the Open Wing Alliance for supporting our member groups in Asia to advance institutional cage-free campaign work in their countries. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the Open Wing Alliance, we are a global coalition of nearly 80 organizations around the world, united in a common mission to end the abuse of chickens worldwide. Specifically, we have 14 member groups in Asia representing 10 countries. And together, our coalition is changing the way the world's biggest companies treat animals and setting new standards for corporate animal welfare policies, locally and globally. So to start off, I'd like to share with you how this all started. The Open Wing Alliance is a program of the Humane League, and the Humane League has branches in the US, the UK, Mexico, and Japan. But we didn't think that the best path forward was to keep expanding THL all over the world. There are many groups out there doing outstanding work and who already have the organizational infrastructure, volunteer base, and cultural and local knowledge to carry out this work effectively. So we figured if we could build a networked coalition and work together towards our common goal, we could accomplish these shared goals faster and more efficiently. So in the spring of 2016, David Coleman-Heidi, who is THL's president, and Erin Ross, THL's vice president of policy and strategy, called a meeting between a few of the major farmed animal groups in Europe. They flew to Copenhagen to share THL's story in the US, how we won the cage-free campaign and the specific tactics that we used, and to propose the idea of forming an alliance to end cages worldwide. At the beginning, we only had a handful of coalition groups and essentially no budget for this program, but we started to give training to these groups in THL style of pressure campaigning, shared a very early draft of the campaign's manual, and started to attend corporate meetings with groups in other countries. And this was the beginning of the OWA. And from the beginning, we have operated under 4 key principles that still guide our work today. The first is collaborative. Sharing information, insights, resources, and skills is crucial to achieving our mission to end the abuse of chickens worldwide. After all, it's going to take all of us together to achieve our bold mission. Secondly, we are globally minded. Our members regard the local work as part of a bigger global movement. Our strategies and tactics are developed with a global impact in mind and are implemented within the context of country-specific dynamics. Third, we are driven. OWA members are actively working to achieve our shared mission, and continued engagement and participation in coalition-wide initiatives has proven crucial to our history of success. Finally, we are strategic. We prioritize and maximize our time and resources, focusing our attention on actions that prove to be effective in creating change for animals. Since then, we have grown into a strong and extensive coalition with nearly 80 organizations in 62 countries. Our first step toward achieving our mission is eliminating battery cages from the planet, and we're working towards that by securing one corporate cage-free policy at a time. In case anyone isn't familiar with the term battery cage, they are these tiny wired cages pictured here that don't allow hens the space to spread their wings, move around normally, access food or water, or perform any other of their natural behaviors. We chose to focus on helping egg-laying hens because right now, across the globe, the majority of hens are confined in these cruel cages. So I want to do a quick poll now. Can you guess how many hens there are in the world? the majority of which suffer in cage confinement. Do you think it's 50 million, 100 million, 1 billion, or 5 billion? Please feel free to share your guess or answer if you're confident in the chat. Sassy, Craig, and I think a host think it's 5 billion. You are guessing 5 billion. Right. Unfortunately, it is the correct answer. It is 5 billion. So 5 billion hens are laying over 1 trillion eggs every single year. And these are just huge, incomprehensible figures. But we are making progress on this issue in nearly every region of the world. And how do we create this change exactly? Well, we believe that a world that's free of animal abuse starts with a world that has less animal abuse. Step by step, day by day, big social change is a journey of small and meaningful incremental steps. It could be ending the use of cages, giving animals more space, or banning cruel breeding. All of these wins change the factory farming system, slowly breaking down its walls and getting us closer to our goal, to end the abuse of animals for food. These small changes can make a huge difference to an incredibly vast number of animals, like the over 5 billion hens that we just talked about. We have a very real possibility of achieving these changes, so we see this as a moral imperative to seize these chances to reduce as much animal suffering as possible right now in the circumstances that we are working in. And we know that these changes are making a difference. Major corporations across all food sectors have committed to going cage-free, with over 450 commitments secured across North America, thanks to organizations working on this issue. The Humane League Labs published a report on US egg production data, which shows a huge increase in the percentage of hens living in cage-free systems compared to just 5 to 10 years ago. This is a huge step in the right direction, and it's safe to say that corporate commitments contribute to this shift alongside other important activism strategies like legal bans on cages. And similarly, across Europe, home to some of the largest egg producers in the world, animal protection groups have secured over 1,100 cage-free policies, and this number is increasing every day. But because the abuse of animals raised for food is a global crisis, in order to truly eradicate cages for hens and reduce the greatest amount of suffering, this kind of progress that we're seeing in Europe and North America needs to be seen across the globe. Because even if all of the companies across Europe, Africa, North America, Latin America, and Oceania committed to be 100% cage-free, we still wouldn't be halfway to eradicating cages for good, because currently over 60% of the global egg supply is produced in Asia. So before we switch gears and talk about how the OWA coalition is set up, I want to share some progress, victories that we have seen in Asia on this issue. So just this year alone, thanks to our member organization, Sinergia Animal in Thailand, we have secured a commitment from Minor Food Group, which is one of the biggest food service companies in the Asia Pacific region, with over 2,000 locations in 27 countries. They have committed to go 100% cage-free for all owned and franchised locations by 2027. In addition, we have also seen commitments from Central Food Retail and Food Passion, which are all big restaurant companies in Thailand. In Japan, just a few months ago in August, the Cabinet Office cafeteria of the Japanese government has gone cage-free. The cafeteria is operated by Nikoku Trust, which is Japan's largest food contractor. And this is the first government cafeteria in the country to go cage-free. And we see this as a symbolic victory. We also saw Aeon, the largest retailer in Japan and Asia, started selling cage-free eggs in 24 of their stores, and they're aiming to incorporate cage-free eggs at all locations across the country by 2022. And in the Philippines, the country's Department of Agriculture approved a code of practice for cage-free egg production, which is initiated by our member group, Animal Kingdom Foundation. Again, this is another symbolic change, laying important groundwork for bigger changes in the industry. So now that I have talked about the founding of the OWA and some of our successes, I want to move on to how we achieve our goals. As I've mentioned, OWA has two main goals: one, to end the abuse of chickens worldwide, and two, to strengthen the global farm animal movement. Everything we do revolves around these two clear goals, which help us stay laser focused and make it easier to track our progress. We work to accomplish these goals in three main ways. One, by providing training, two, providing resources, and three, through coordinated corporate campaigns. And I'll quickly elaborate each of these initiatives. So training takes on many different forms within the OWA, one of which is the annual Global Summit and several smaller regional summits. These events provide a space for coalition members to strategize together, share information, and serve as a training opportunity for newer groups. This photo was taken at our last in-person Global Summit back in 2019 in Warsaw, Poland, where we had 140 activists from around 45 groups and 44 countries in attendance. Since then, we have hosted the Global Summit virtually, and last year we had 300 people registered to attend. Another way we support and train groups is by offering in-person or virtual one-on-one training tailored to the specific context or needs of the member organization. So we would visit specific groups to offer trainings in whatever they need relating to securing corporate chicken welfare policies. And a great benefit of the coalition model is that the Humane League staff are not the only ones who lead trainings for OWA groups. Several experienced coalition groups have also conducted these trainings, enabling us to support more groups each year. So this is a photo from a training in Peru led by Sinergia Animal, where they visited a cage-free farm. Since Sinergia Animal also operates throughout Latin America, they are much better positioned to lead a training that's tailored to the cultural specific context and circumstances of the region. And of course, we have to adapt because of the pandemic. So recently we have hosted trainings for groups in Israel, Africa, the Balkans, and 3 groups in Asia. And these were our first virtual trainings. But we think these are huge successes because we were able to make the program interactive and workshop-based. The second main way we work towards our goals is by creating and crowdsourcing how-to resources related to corporate outreach and campaigns. So these resources are located on our private member site. The site contains everything from extensive manuals on corporate campaigning, corporate outreach, to webinar recordings, case studies, training videos, and more. Another key aspect of our support is making sure our members have funding to carry out their work. To this end, we provide grants to our member organizations to either start or accelerate chicken welfare work in their respective parts of the world. The OWA grant program has expanded greatly since we launched it in 2017. In 2021, we are distributing nearly $1.5 million to 39 organizations across the world, and among them, 7 grantees are from Asia. The third way we achieve our goals as a coalition is by launching coordinated global campaigns, like this one pictured here against Howto. This campaign consists of all OWA groups hosting a large-scale protest where while we were together for the Global Summit, launching petitions, taking actions on social media, and calling the hotel giant to go cage-free globally. And after just 24 hours of campaign actions, Hilton committed to going cage-free for their operations worldwide. In addition to massive coalition-wide global campaigns, groups are also able to self-organize regional campaigns utilizing the coalition framework. So in mid-August, 10 groups in Asia launched a regional campaign targeting McDonald's, asking them to extend their cage-free commitment to the region when McDonald's have already committed to sourcing cage-free eggs only by 2025 in North America and Latin America. So with the trainings and resources that the OWA provides, animal protection groups from different parts of the world have the power to target corporations that are much bigger than their organizations themselves, and to demand that these corporations eliminate cruel cages from their supply chains. And that brings me to the end of my presentation today. If you're interested to learn more, please get in touch. I can share, or if any of the, I can do it myself. I can share my email in the chat later on. And if you are watching either live or the recording, please reach out to us because we are actively seeking new members in Asia, and we want your input and your expertise so together we can create a much bigger impact for chickens worldwide. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Angel, for a great presentation. I particularly liked hearing about the successes that OWA and their members have had so far in Asia, but you're absolutely right that the road is long, with 60% of eggs plus being produced in Asia. So thanks a lot for your great work. I have a question to both of you. Obviously, NGOs are publicly funded, and NGOs who are watching this session, from the back of your great presentations, understand the value of getting involved in your coalitions to help animals that are affected in such huge numbers. But although the members of our movement see the value in really nuanced welfare concerns like eye stalk ablation, for example, or cage rearing of hens or whatever, members of the public might not readily fund that work as they would, let's say, dog welfare or cat welfare or something. So my question is that if there are NGOs out there who want to get involved in your coalitions, but maybe they don't have the personnel or the funding or the resource, I know that Angel mentioned there that OWA has a great funding program. I guess, Christine, first I'll ask you, is a model like that something that your coalitions would adopt in the future? Could you see a funding program coming down the line in the future? Would that help your work, do you think?
Yeah, great question, Craig. So the Open Wing Alliance is actually our inspiration for why we created the Aquatic Animal Alliance. So definitely in the future is one of our goals to do regranting, especially to researchers that are based in the Global South, who are doing, research into fish welfare and welfare interventions. For now, as I think many of you can relate to, there are funding challenges. So we haven't been able to do the regranting program like we anticipated, but definitely something we want to do in the future. And in terms of your other question as to how groups that have limited resources can get involved a little more. That's why I mentioned that, we do have some active members and also some very passive members who don't really engage that much, but, they see the finished draft of the comments and they sign on. That's all they have to do. They don't have to, dedicate any personnel or time, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. That's a great answer, and it's good to know that the aspiration is there to offer a funding program as well, because it seems that there's a real necessity for it. And yeah, thanks for reiterating that actually groups can get involved in your coalitions without too much input of their own resource, and that's important because it's important for the policymakers that you're conversing with to show that the welfare movement is united across Asia, whether that's NGOs working on dogs, or I see some SPCAs and things like that in your members list. So yeah, it's good to have a united front regardless of the funding at the moment. Angel, you said that you've funded 7 organizations in Asia this year in 2021. That's really great to hear. My question on that is, does OWA have a strategy for prioritizing key geographical regions based on what they think will be effective, or how much help is needed in that region?
Sure, thanks for the question. That's a good question too. I would say the simple answer, the quick answer is yes. So we are actually working on recruitment plans, and we have identified regions from across the world that we've looked at, for example, what animal protection or animal welfare groups are already on the ground in each country, and egg production data, for example, and identified several groups, several regions, excuse me. I think they're Middle East, Southeast Asia, and Africa. So we hope to recruit more members from these regions in the near future. So these are our high priority regions in terms of recruitment. And I'm pretty sure that there are also priorities in terms of giving out grants. At the same time, I'm not really that we have a grant specialist in the team. So I don't think I'm in the best position to answer this question. But if anyone is interested, again, they are absolutely encouraged to reach out to us. And I also, if I may, I want to add on to what Christine just said. So Christine said that they have the active and passive members. So I think it's a little bit similar at the OWA. So member groups are expected to take some core actions for each campaign. For example, sending out an email to the target corporation at the launch of the campaign, and launching an online petition. And then depending on each group's capacity, they can take on more roles. For example, some groups, if the situation allows, they might organize in-person protests or use other creative methods that where they can utilize their strengths. So I hope that this doesn't, groups who are interested won't be, the capacity wouldn't be a major concern. That's what I'm trying to get at. And the groups don't have to have track records in corporate campaigns in order to apply to be a member. So even if groups have no prior experience in this area of work, they are still welcome to.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. And that's a great point you made, Angel. And I should say that Open Wing Alliance is a great community as well. So I've experienced firsthand the Open Wing Alliance Slack channel, which is open to NGOs who are joining as members. And exactly as you said, even if NGOs don't have a great deal of resource or or personnel or time or whatnot to participate in the campaigns, they can at least join, and then they can come into the Slack channel and they'll get support, and then it may spiral from there. They may find that more and more they're interested in the topic and they actually want to seek funding for the work. So I would definitely encourage NGOs watching this to join regardless, and just see where the journey takes them. So thanks for that. I've got a question here in the chat for Christine. Could you please explain a little further on the global certification labeling that the Institute is setting up, and whether or how it differs from labeling schemes for land animals, please?
Yeah, great question. We're not actually creating a global, like our own certification labeling scheme. We might in the future, but for now, we're getting existing certifiers to change their standards and elevate aquatic animal welfare standards. Some of them don't exist and then others do, but it's very inconsistent. And so we just want to have a very, consistent and high level type of situation. So basically we developed our specific asks based on the 5 freedoms, and use those as guiding principles, and primarily, providing them good health, and that includes appropriate feeding ratios and times, and space requirement that's species and species specific, and then also water quality, which is generally an issue more in I would say developing nations, and then effective stunning and slaughter. So yeah, we have specific parameters under all of these different 5 categories, and we submit that in our joint comments, and hope that they take them into account in their revised version.
Great, thanks very much. And I think that one key difference to mention, and I hope that what I'm saying is correct here, that to answer that person's question, certification and labeling schemes for land animals have a bit of a history and are fairly well established, whereas it's important to mention that the work that Aquatic Life Institute and its coalitions are doing is a little bit more tip of the spear, because I'm right in saying it's not as covered ground, so there isn't a history to draw on of labeling schemes for fish that's quite as developed as what you're working on now. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We're kind of still researching as we go. And a lot of the research, takes time, because you need a lab and you kind of need to test out the different parameters and what works best. So, although we have an idea and some specific parameters for the most farmed species, there's still a huge gap in knowledge, and that's why we think that in the future, when we can, a re-granting program to encourage more researchers to look into this field is absolutely necessary. And I was going to say something else, but I'm blinking.
Too late in San Francisco. Well, no worries. Thanks very much. And it's another, this kind of avant-garde, being the real front runners in that field is another great reason for NGOs who are watching to join. I've got a question now for Angel. So I'm thinking about OWA's success, particularly, let's say, in the USA or in North America or in the West in general. You mentioned in your presentation the large volume of successful cage-free policies in the West. And I'm thinking of the tactics that OWA has been known to employ, and I'm thinking of previous presentations where your colleagues have mentioned quite hard tactics of public naming and shaming of corporations or their lead employees or whatnot. Those kind of tactics are unlikely to be effective in Asia. And I just wondered if you could talk a little bit more about Open Wing Alliance's kind of training and resources to, if NGOs are wondering how they can do this work, how they can approach corporations in a kind of Asian appropriate way.
Sure, that's a great question. Thank you, Craig. I think, so in short, there is room for different groups to adjust their strategies and language tactics in their campaigns, so it's more culturally and socially acceptable. For example, Craig, you might know, and just to share with everyone, our member groups in Japan have said that the more aggressive actions, for example, picking or targeting individuals or even individual companies, might put groups in legal risk. So they might be in risk of, I hope I'm putting this right, but they might be in risk of being charged with defamation. So there are strict defamation laws in Japan. So our member groups in Japan would choose actions that, say, if we have global campaigns or regional campaigns, groups will choose actions that are appropriate in their own countries. So of course, that they're safe. And another example is we have onboarded a new group from mainland China, and in China, they use different social media platforms, like different social media platforms dominate. So usually with OWA campaigns, we would use Facebook, like comment on posts of our target operations on Facebook and Instagram. Maybe we would do a tweet storm, so leaving comments on a particular tweet of the target company. And these might not work in China. So again, groups would have to figure, like, as a coalition, we figure out which tactics are appropriate and which kind of actions are feasible for each group to take on the ground. So it's not a one size fits all strategy or solution. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it 100% does. Yeah, yeah. In summary, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, and it's great to know that Open Wing Alliance has that attitude. So thanks very much. I think we have time to squeeze in one last question before we close, and it's a quick question for both. So some NGOs who are watching this, obviously members of our movement would prefer a reduction demand for layer hens, for eggs and fish globally. But both of your work faces up to the fact that that is not the reality in the here and now, and that's why your work is commendable. But do you think that NGOs watching this should consider the fact that there's a possible knock-on effect of your work for reduction demand, and that that could be a reason for them to participate with you, even if they would prefer a reduction demand approach?
Angel, would you like to go first?
I can. I'll go quickly. Because I want to be mindful of time. I hope I understand you correctly, but I would say yes. So we at THL and UOWA, we would want to see a world that is, like I mentioned earlier in my presentation, a world that is free of animal suffering. And I guess our theory of change is that we do that step by step. And we have, like, when we secure this corporate commitment and create institutional change, there are knock-on effects, and these campaigns play a crucial role in securing meaningful welfare improvements, because in reality, the world is not going to be free of this kind of suffering overnight. And we know that what we're doing is making small, incremental, and meaningful changes for the animals. I think that's the gist of it. I can go on, but again, if any groups have any concerns or doubts about our approach, we would love to discuss. We can discuss in greater length in the future. But in short, we see our corporate approach as stepping stones to reaching our bigger, longer-term goal.
Great. Thanks very much, Angel. Any quick final comments from you, Christine, on that?
We have a very similar approach, but we also agree that consumers who are in a position to do so need to absolutely reduce their consumption of fish. And we are not shy in saying that. We are, aware that that's not a blanket statement. And so that's why we say, if you're in a position to do so, obviously for rural communities or very local communities that have no other source of protein, fine. We try to, tailor our comments to these types of different situations and environments. But we absolutely think that, first of all, we can't start telling consumers that we need to